The Vortex 1 to 10. This is the scope that we're going to be talking about next, specifically pros and cons, and just some considerations that you may want to think about in regards to purchasing something like this. I wouldn't really know how to talk about the Vortex 1 to 10 if I don't bring up some of the attributes by the Vortex 1 to 6. So a couple things. This measures out to be, I think, about 10.1 inches. And then the overall weight of this particular scope, being a 30 millimeter, is 21.5 ounces. When we now look at the Vortex 1 to 10, it's the same length. I have more power, the weight stayed the same, but I also went up to a 34 millimeter in regards to the tube size. So there's some changes, and I think in a weird way that 1 to 10 is gonna end up killing this scope, and there's gonna be almost no need for this scope. Some might say, well, do I really need 10 power? That's like somebody complaining about, I'm too big. I've never heard anybody complain, I have too much power to see. If you really want to dumb it down, then put it back at 6 power. But to be able to have the ability to go to a 10, I've never heard anybody complain about that. Plus I can see more, I can mill better. There are a lot of different attributes that more power gives us. However, it kind of all started here with the Vortex 1 to 6. So we're going to now talk about the 1 to 10 and talk about its positive and negative attributes in some cases compared to this scope as well. So when Vortex sent me to 1 to 10, I asked them to send it to me in a version of MRAD. There are two versions that they do. One's MOA, the other one's MRAD. I ran the old 1 to 6 MRAD. That made sense to me. And since all my other rifle scopes are in MRAD, I just keep it the same. But some users do prefer MOA, and that option is available to you as well. One of the things that anyone who had purchased a 1 to 6 is going to be familiar with in regards to the MRAD version is that originally it was a 0.2 MRAD, and now this new 1 to 10 is in a 0.1 MRAD. And what I think for those that like to dial, this is going to be a bigger deal because you're going to be able to maintain a lot better accuracy because you're going to be able to dial it in even tighter than you were, say, the 1 to 6. And the 1 to 6 really wasn't, made to be a sniper scope. It was an intermediate range scope. Not that you couldn't take long hits with that particular scope, but when we start getting into dialing, that kind of changes things. So I think that now that you can dial this to 0.1, a lot of people are going to really like that particular feature. The caps, let's talk about those. May not seem like a big deal, but I like it when you can take just an aluminum cap like this, screw it on, and protect your turrets. And the reason why is, I don't baby this stuff. All this equipment, though it is expensive, it's built to be abused, and it's built to be in rugged environments. With that said, I like when you have screw-on caps that protect the turret. The turrets, you'll be surprised how much abuse those things get, how many hits they end up taking. And if you really like to dial, well, then I don't want that exposed. I don't want that to get messed with. So I like being able to finally show up to a destination if you need to and unscrew these when you need them. Aside from that, I like to protect the turret. Now for me, I shoot inside the glass anyways and I don't dial. However, for others, you may like to dial. Either way, I like protecting these turrets. You have to, and these caps will do that. Pretty simple fix. Now, when you look at the illuminated reticle portion right here, you'll notice that it pulls out. Okay, no pun intended, and nevertheless, it'll go back in. You'll notice that there are numbers, and then of course, there are in-between spots where they're what I call a hack. And One thing that I like is that I can preset the scope dependent upon my environment. So if it's a very bright day, let's just say I go up to number 8, and that's my favorite number. On a sunny day, number 8 is where I want to be when I'm shooting. What I can do is I can pre-stage it to where when I turn it off, it's in between 7 or 8 or 8 and 9, which means I'm only one click away from that. So having a good illuminated reticle, having this feature lock, having the ability to pre-stage it, I think is a pretty big deal. Since somebody's gonna bring it up, I'll head it off at the pass. I have duct tape on my eyepiece, and the reason why is I don't want my eyepiece to move at all. It's extremely important. A lot of manufacturers don't have locking eyepieces, and I wish they did. Paint marking it doesn't really help me because it can still move. I wanna grab my gear and immediately, if I have to go to work, start doing an engagement, not worried about whether or not this shifted on me. What is this responsible for? Well, it's responsible for your eye and the way it sees the reticle, meaning we want it to be nice, clean, crisp, and vibrant. So with that said, once I set it, once I zero the gun, I don't want it to move, or that can cause some shifts downrange. Going on to the magnification. For those that are familiar with the magnification ring on the Vortex, you'll know that in the past versions, it was pretty stiff to move. Now I think they've found a very good happy medium in regards to if you bump it, it's not gonna roll it really quickly, but when you grab it to move it just a little bit, it goes. So I think you're gonna see that they really paid a little bit more attention to this piece right here. And for those of you that are used to running the 1-6s, you're gonna really like that. This knurl right here, it comes in the box. If you want it on, you can attach it. If you don't want it on, leave it in the box. It also comes with the sunshade. I'm not a real big fan of sunshades. I don't really use them, but I do know people in certain environments use them a lot. So nevertheless, it's in the box, ready to go for you as another option. As far as mounts, I really like these Geisley mounts. They work really well in regards to when I go to mount the scope, and then of course I level the scope and then I start screwing it down, it doesn't turn on me. So what I'm finding is with scope mounts, Geisley's done a really good job in their mount. So that's what I have on this, because I know somebody's gonna ask a question. So nevertheless, we'll break down the internal of the reticle in a second. This is the reticle that it comes with. One of the nice features is now I have mills to hold for wind. Of course, I have my normal mill lines down below, and we're gonna talk about this part of the reticle right here in a minute. One thing that I like in regards to this reticle over the 1-6 is that I'm actually now able to not only hold mills below, which I could do in the 1-6, but I can now hold for wind. I found myself with the 1-6 in many environments where we're pushing like 20-mile-an-hour wind, and now I have to actually dial in order to use my horizontal line to start holding for wind. So the fact that I've got a little bit of a Christmas tree now that I can use my mill dots to hold for wind is a huge advantage for me. Now, when we talked a second ago, I brought up that reticle, that part of the reticle. That's what illuminates as you look back in the video. With that said, pro and con. One, on the old 1-6, what I liked was you had your crosshair and then the dot appeared. It was a nice, clean dot. There was nothing busy around it. And whether you were doing something internal or in very close proximity, I found it very fast for target acquisition. Reminded me a lot of using red dots on my rifle, because those red dots on my rifle are either in 2 MOA or on my handguns 1 MOA. So I don't need a really big bracket in order to throw that up on a human being to fire. Just give me a nice clean dot. I wish they would make another reticle that had the Christmas tree, a crosshair, and the dot appeared just in the center. That would be my perfect reticle, because when it needs to be busy, it's busy, and when it needs to be clean, it's clean, especially when you dial it down to 1, since this is a first focal plane optic. I am curious how this is going to do against the 1-6 as the future goes on. And the reason being is that when we start looking at the 1-6, we're looking at still a 10-inch optic, just like this, still the same amount of weight, except this comes with a 34 millimeter tube and it also goes up to 10 power. It's one of those things where if I could only buy one, I would definitely go buy the 1 to 10 vice the 1 to 6. But I'm sure Vortex has already thought about that, and they've already considered, is this going to be in the future a little bit of a 1 to 6 killer of their own brand? So nevertheless, I think that this is a great scope. I'm excited that they have finally jumped this scope into a 1 to 10. I know it's taken them a few years in order to pull it off, but I think they achieved it, and I think they have done a great job.